Project 2025 Mandate for Leadership Live with Adrienne Mays, Part 3, Day 60 in the Billionaire Journey. Project 2025 publishes comprehensive policy guide, the Mandate for Leadership, the Conservative Promise. With the goal of shaping policy decisions among presidential candidates, the 2025 Presidential Transition Project announced the publication of the ninth edition of Mandate for Leadership, the Conservative Promise. It's the earliest publication of Mandate ever, months before candidates square off in the first presidential primary debate. A comprehensive policy guide for the next conservative U.S. president, the book pulls from the expertise of hundreds of political appointees, policy scholars, and conservative leaders across the conservative movement. The book builds upon the legacy of the 1981 edition of Mandate for Leadership, which appeared on the Washington Post paperback bestseller list. Mandate for Leadership, the Conservative Promise, offers both specific proposals for addressing every major issue facing the country and a blueprint for how to restructure every agency to solve those issues. Among the recommendations in this edition, restore the integrity of the Department of Justice to ensure accountability by giving the FBI a hard rest, ensuring consistent litigation decisions and enforcing immigration laws, solidify our border by structuring the Department of Homeland Security and its priorities in ways that streamline the immigration process, in unclear immigration visas, and clear a more secure immigration process, break up the Department of Education to strengthen education freedom, enhance parental rights in education, and protect taxpayers from student loan forgiveness. Mandates for Leadership, the Conservative Promise, features 30 chapters spanning all aspects of the federal government. Editors Paul Dans, director of Project 2025, and Stephen Groves, the Margaret Thatcher Fellow at Heritage Foundation, worked with more than 35 primary authors and hundreds of contributors to assemble the 900-page book, which will be distributed Friday at Heritage's two-day leadership summit in National Harbor, Maryland. Heritage President Dr. Kevin Roberts released the following statement Friday praising the publication. For over 2 years, the left has ignored the voice of everyday Americans, leading to crippling inflation, biological males dominating women's sports, rampant violence, and a crisis in education not seen in decades. Our country is all but unrecognizable. This is why the conservative movement is coming together to prepare for the next conservative administration. Heritage is convening the conservative movement behind the policies to ensure that the next president has the right policy and personnel necessary to dismantle the administrative state and restore self-governance to the American people. The Conservative Promise is just the first step in preparing future conservative leaders for the task of serving their country, and it will continue to guide the movement-wide coalition. We know what time it is. The conservative movement is on offense to restore our great nation. Since the first edition of Mandate for Leadership more than 40 years ago, this policy Bible aims to provide administrations with a blueprint of policy solutions. The Reagan administration implemented nearly half the ideas included in the first edition by the end of his first year in office, while the Trump administration embraced nearly 64% of the 2016 edition's policy solutions after 1 year. The following is a list of the 30 chapters and authors for each. And this is the document, Project 2025, that Adrienne Mays, AI Genius, is providing the random act of kindness here on day 60 of the Billionaire Journey of Project 2025 Mandate for Leadership, Random Act of Kindness with Adrienne Mays. And day 60, it would behoove me if I didn't speak on the blessing that literally brought me here in 60 by Design, that 2007 line. And my business partner of 60 by Design, Inika Gaines, whom I met 17 years ago when pledging Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated with 60 by Design, day 60 of the Billionaire Dream, and 15 years ago, and just believing in the vision of Adrienne Mays. It's our story, founded on September 11, 2009, CCC Because We Care Foundation, is a 501c3 organization created by Adriane Mays, Enika Gaines, Melissa Green Jackson, and Ayanna Thomas. We leverage the power of artificial intelligence to help underprivileged individuals and communities achieve a limitless future. Based in Detroit, Michigan, our focus is global and is in uplifting youth, athletes, and entrepreneurs, guiding them to become leaders in their fields by embracing artificial intelligence. We want to thank each and every sponsor that has come on board with CCC Because We Care Foundation over the last 15 years, as we extend our heartfelt gratitude for all our sponsors for our community support and generosity, enabling us to build and transform lives and empower communities through education and kindness, through our Holiday Acts of Kindness Giving program, through our program, which during the holidays, we ensure that the festive spirit is taken care of. So those pertinent calendar dates like birthdays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, we make sure no one feels alone during those times. Our AI Brand Ambassador Accelerator Work and Learning Experience program, this digital franchise accelerator program for businesses and individuals, offers training, workshops, and giving initiatives to spread goodwill and uplift the community through AI. So educating and giving the education of empowerment to individuals with wealth creation, healthy living, financial literacy, and economic advancement opportunities through our AI Work and Learning Experience program, CCC Because We Care Foundation wants to encourage the financial independence and lifelong learning. Global travel experiences. We provide transformative travel opportunities for personal growth and cultural achievement. So funding trips, helping broaden horizons and creating lifelong memories for individuals, groups, and families. And Live Weekly, you'll catch Adriane Mays, AI Genius, live weekly on Saturdays from 3 to 5 p.m., just building up to September 11th, 2024, with our weekly 2-hour transformational artificial intelligence educational workshops. We may have a speaker that may involve, or we may have workshops that show you invaluable resources and insights into AI marketing and successful digital franchise careering over time. And our digital franchise mastery. We are in the trenches together with you in building a billionaire brand. So picture yourself mastering the skills over time in the digital economy. Picture where you were just a year ago from today. So with implementing consistent action and effort and having a plan, you'll learn the secrets to building your billionaire digital franchise and have assistance using AI tools and automation along the way. So registering and helping those through scholarship. And it won't be our angle, and our goal is to foster a culture of kindness in our Fallen Soldier Scholarship to help those that literally have passed away. So Jabari Wesson, shout out to Rest in Heaven. And Kool-Aid Wright, shout out and rest in heaven. Andrea Gardner, shout out and rest in heaven. Clarence Hardy Mays, shout out and rest in heaven. So these fallen soldiers are a part of the why of CCC Because We Care Foundation. Some of the random acts of kindness that we provide allows through those donations that we have provided now. And donate now. Some of our volunteers, as such as Janet Wright with Lovely Day Charity, love the strongest force on earth, which will heal us and bring us together. Thank you, ladies, for the love of God in it all. Now you know I love you. Janet Wright, Lovely Day Charity. Another one of our volunteers, the advice and life insurance referral support that Adriane Mays provides has provided and always been first class. So I can't thank them enough for how they have helped. And then Don Ray, owner as well last year, Thanksgiving 2023, we helped service 300 Highland Park, Michigan residents receiving a warm Thanksgiving meal, and can't wait to actually help them in regards. I can't thank them enough for how they helped. Don Ray, the owner of Mr. Corned Beef in Highland Park, Michigan. So why partner with CCC Because We Care Foundation? I mean, you're investing in a future where everyone has the opportunity to shine. Accessing AI tools, email marketing tips, text messaging tips, AI opportunities, and digital franchise growth, and always be learning. You never know, just like with Project 2025, the mandate of leadership, what is around the corner. So having the opportunity to stay in tune with the Google trends and joining the Detroit ChatGPT revolution as your captain here, Adriane Mays wants to keep you in the know. So the ways you can help is to donate now and participating in our Random Acts of Kindness virtual celebration, which will be held on July the 11th, 2024, and engage by joining and becoming a part of the community. So when you go to cccwecaremi.com and become a part of the community, you can post and actually your ideas in the community for a Random Acts of Kindness. So any type of travel experience ideas, any type of physical, mental health and awareness ideas, any type of AI educational development ideas, any type of financial education or wealth creation ideas, you post here in the Random Acts of Kindness community for a chance to actually have them funded. The best comment was the comment from yesterday, as the Random Acts of Kindness that I provided when God tapped me on the shoulder yesterday was to actually read the actual Project 2025 Mandate for Leadership Live, Part 3, which we're getting to here shortly. But with this introduction, I wanted to actually introduce the why, CCC Because We Care Foundation, the empowerment, the reason for the reading of and doing this Random Acts of Kindness is comments like I received last night. So, when God tapped me on the shoulder at 10:30, not knowing whether or not it was a good idea or not, but actually reaching out to businesses and my business partner, Unica Gaines, being traveling right now. And I remember all the time she tells me, like on Sundays, for example, that's a rest day. So I knew on July 4th, regardless of what Adriane Mays and the grind and the hustle that has going on, I knew that I wanted to provide some type of act of kindness, wanted to move into the direction, but not bother business owners on a day that's a holiday that needs to be celebrated with family and bonding and growth. And however your freedom day is to be free. So when you're free and have those opportunities, I chose to, and God put into my path, the Project 2025 in reading tax-free wealth. And I do my reading, and this is not the first time I've read this book. I've read this book several times, but each time I read it, it's like the movie Fight Club, where you watch Fight Club and you see something different every time you see the movie. And just like I watched the show Billions on Amazon Prime, I watch that show religiously because I find something. There's 7 seasons, and so in the seasons that I've watched, you find something every time that you watch it that might be a little bit more peculiar, a different brand that can stand out. That's why you're working towards your bespoke billionaire dream. So it doesn't surprise me, like I said, that my business partner, Unica Gaines, and 60 by Design, how we actually connected and became the best friend and angel in my life. And like I said, just having CCC Because We Care Foundation celebrating our 15 years together in the community, focusing on wealth creation, financial education, travel experiences, and AI education, acts of kindness. This story is a Random Acts of Kindness. Unica Gaines is acts of kindness. Like, I don't know how to say it more than enough. And it's one of those things where, I feel great calling someone amazing and a queen, because when you're able to do that for yourself, you try to have people around you that model that same behavior. Unica Gaines makes you grow up when you don't want to. She makes you learn about yourself, things that you want to kind of avoid. And one of the things that I know it and can be honest and say that in the journey of being the best in the possible, even having the idea of being a billionaire, I even know that can be obtainable because I do have a partner like Unica Gaines. So partnering with a CCC Because We Care Foundation, it's not for everyone. I get it, because there's work involved. And when you're working, it's not just doing the work out in the community or going to conferences with her daughter. Like, she went to the Set an Example conference in Chicago, Illinois this past weekend and met these amazing women and insights, and was able to share this insights and information to grow our organization to do yourself well and do it consistently. So hearing the message from Dr. Keita Joy that was shared from Unica Gaines, that's how education works. That's how you branch into growth and building your billionaire brand. So I thank God for 60 by Design. Adriane Mays would not be here July 5th, 2024, moving forward with full force, with confidence, with anything without my business partner and best friend and angel in my life. So I thank God for 60 by Design. If anything, having the support of someone knowing this crazy mindset of Adriane Mays. I've been wired and pulled so many different ways, born and raised here in Detroit, Michigan. What up, though? And knowing that Project 2025, when Barack Obama came and ran for office, I felt so great because I understood what he was saying, be a part of change. And so it was not the hard, complex ways. So if you look at the state of Michigan having a 16% illiteracy rate, and then you look at going even deeper here in Detroit, Michigan, what up, though, where I'm from, and the literacy rate is 47%. But then you have a 900-page document that is being provided to actually show the direction of how our tax wealth can go. And yes, I can raise my hand, as crazy as I am, to read it, but most people won't. And what we have a tendency to do is listen to social media. We have a tendency to look at now the TikToks and the YouTubes on our phones and the Facebooks instead of relying on taking that book and going back and getting that information again, like the old school book. And even taking AI, being an AI genius, taking it a step further, knowing that, again, AI can do this real fast. I can throw this 900 page into AI, hit a program like literally, my Deal.ai program can literally throw this information and come up with a whole video that I can post on my Instagram or my YouTube or my TikTok or my Facebook page in 2 seconds and be done. And that's the time-saving piece of it. But what I've learned in the last 2 weeks or so, building this virtual random acts of kindness campaign with different small business owners, like all of the benefits of being a small business owner. And I know Anika Gaines, as she is the tax extraordinaire, deals with it with her over 600 clients that she connects with, that they don't even know some of the benefits that they can have. But it's not our job at the same time to just keep beating it down someone's angle that you can save money and become a billionaire too, just making some changes. So these changes now must be in alignment with what other things are going on in the government. Hence, Donald Trump running for office, him having 34 felonies, and in reality, even him being on television that last week, for us to listen to the next step of it being a Project 2025, mandate for leadership. So having how the world works and not even making a question or even talking about the pros and cons of that even debate, just knowing that you have to read to understand. You have to, even before I can say, hey, I'm for it, hey, I'm against it, I can't label anybody until I do the education. But here's the thing, if I can't read it, then what? So Adriane Mays, AI genius, like I said, yesterday, took on the random acts of kindness flights that God tapped me on the shoulder, like, let's read it. And because of people in 60-second segments, as I know, building as a digital marketing guru, people will listen, and the algorithm will force you to listen to the actual 60-second chopped up moments that I'll build on a YouTube page so that people can actually learn about this random acts of kindness 2024, but the Project 2025 mandate of what is planned for us in regards to building wealth. So for example, it doesn't matter if I'm sitting with my clients and talking about the universal life insurance plans, but now the benefits have changed in regards to amortizations, and then the different tax levels and the brackets have changed. If I'm using old behavior and not coming to the new, then I'm not setting up my clients for success. Wealth creation is ever changing. It's something that could have been used, some of the things from the past. That's why I like to read the older books from the past, like, the stress-free retirement from my life insurance days, as well as building with this AI digital real estate opportunity. But taking this moment now, knowing that the next steps of 2025, our government has an opportunity of something called COVID, and being able to have the relationship with China, and now understanding that a little bit further, getting out the emotion of COVID-19, what the change that made in Adriane Mays' life. Let's take all the emotion out of that and then look at how we move forward. And then moving forward is educating yourself. It's not going in blindly, listening to the hero or naysayers, and then making your own decisions to move forward. So my thing is this: if you look at anything and everything, money is something that can actually make change. I can talk to you all day, but people are not going to listen to me. And that's one thing that I do understand. And that's why it's going to go for hours in regards to this broadcast, as the last parts the other 2 days. Nobody cares about me. I get it. And it's nothing personal. I care about me. But the key thing is building a billionaire, having the like minds around you. It's called educating. How you get there, I got to try different ways. So I was in Billy Jean's 10-day AI program, his business plan program. And I did the AI paid advertising program with Facebook and YouTube. So spending your money and going to get paid advertising or doing organic advertising of things like this, where you're actually showing how this brands and building, that's all you're doing. All you're doing is letting people know what you do, building a community with a system, and that's what Go High Level is for. And then they have all the automated tools that will allow you to nurture and cultivate your audience. So I put out a video, and then I'm gonna get into the reading. A 60-second video earlier when I was doing my Shakeology, when I had a meeting with billionaire BJ Kanwar in Toronto, Ontario. He's with something called Unicity International. And then he shared with me Raf Malik, with Unicity International as well, making $1 million a month in digital franchise branding. So again, if I'm on a billionaire plan and I'm having a meeting with people and they tell me they're making $1 million a month, don't you pay attention? So again, me, myself being healthy to a T, right? But not all the way, but you're always open to new things. So I take on something, I take a Shakeology, been doing it actually for years, unconsciously, as Unica Gaines is a distributor with Shakeology, doing the plans, the workouts, just having a work from home and entrepreneur healthy type of situation. So within that, we've shared it to our family, our friends doing Shakeology. Unica has a group set up on her phone that, they text and show their pictures and things like that on a consistent basis. So in having that and seeing that with Unicity International and talking to Carlos and talking to Oberi, who also had the transformation, literally took Ozempic appeal and then saw the transformation with Unicity International, reading his story, seeing now the things that he's doing in his health and wealth transformation, making thousands of dollars per month, just telling people about his story. But he uses Linktree, and Linktree is amazing. I used Linktree a couple of years ago when I first started the journey myself. But what I know about Linktree versus a Go High Level and what I do with the premium lead delivery service, when people understand it, as simply is showing people that, okay, you have the opt-in, that's what the Linktree does. And then from the opt-in, you're able to go to the different links, right? But what it does in regards to Go High Level, which is different, they provide an AI chatbot on there. So if you have questions, you can have that right away. You can actually have emails that are actually showing your follow-up. So even if someone does or does not go to your Linktree, and that's the problem with Instagram and a lot of the Linktrees, you can still capture that email address and nurture that client over time. So a lot of people might not be interested in the Random Acts of Kindness virtual celebration September 11th, but what I can do for those that are interested, because those are the ones I want to be around, capture their email address and their name and have them grow the journey with me, right? Because even within, I was thinking, right, and reaching out to different medical spas and trying to gain business for the premium lead delivery service, what I learned is that you have to literally do you well, and do you consistently. So again, that's literally how I wanted to thank Unica Gaines and start out this mandate for Leadership Live. Let's get to the reading part, because day 60 in the billionaire journey would not be without 60 by design, and would not be without Federal Reserve Unica Gaines celebrating 15 years in the community, believing in not only Adriane Mays, but the vision of CCC Because We Care Foundation, and consistently believing in Adriane Mays. I give this time for you, because thank you, because the billionaire dream is not going to be for everybody. It's going to look different, but I love everyone. But the support and the consistency that you have shown, Unica Gaines, thank you. Okay, so let's get into it live. Project 2025 mandate for Leadership Live. Let's get into the reading. If you want to actually find this reading, you can actually find this as well in the Random Acts of Kindness community. We actually have a channel built out to show Random Acts of Kindness. We gotta help people that can't get access to this. What is one thing that you can share with someone as a random act of kindness to give them knowledge about Project 2025? That's going to be the ongoing question. So again, if you come into the community, post your answers there for me. So we're going to go ahead and get started in reading page 120. Again, you can check out chapters 1 and parts 1 and 2, where I read the first parts. But now we're on page 120. So let's get to it. I almost finished yesterday, but I want to make sure that I start on the right page. And thank you so much for the opportunity to even listen to this promise. So we are on section 2, the common defense. Adriane Mays, AI genius, bringing you a bespoke random acts of kindness on this July 5th, 2024. The common defense. Now, while the lives of Americans are affected in noteworthy ways, for better or worse, by each part of the executive branch, the inherent importance of national defense and foreign affairs makes the Departments of Defense and State first among equals. Originating in the George Washington administration, the War Department, as it was then known, was headed by Henry Knox, America's chief artillery officer in the Revolutionary War. Thomas Jefferson, the primary author of the Declaration of Independence, was the first Secretary of State. Despite such long and storied histories, neither department is currently living up to its standards. And the success of the next presidency will be determined in part by whether they can be significantly improved in short order. Ever since our founding, former Acting Secretary of Defense Christopher Miller writes in Chapter 4, Americans have understood that the surest way to avoid war is to be prepared for its peace. Yet the Department of Defense is a deeply troubled institution. It has emphasized leftist politics over military readiness, recruiting what was the worst in 2022 that has been in 2 generations. And the Biden administration's profoundly unserious equity agenda and vaccine mandates have taken a serious toll. Additionally, Miller writes that the atrophy of our defense industrial base, the impact of sequestration, and effective disarmament by many U.S. allies have exacted a high toll on Americans' military. Moreover, our military has adopted a risk-averse culture. Think of mass soldiers, sailors, and airmen, rather than instilling and rewarding courage and thought in action. The good news is that most enlisted personnel and most officers, especially below the rank of general or admiral, continue to be patriotic defenders of liberty. But this is not now Barack Obama's General Officer Corps. That is why Roosevelt argues in Chapter 2 that the National Security Council should rigorously review all general and flag officer promotions to prioritize the core roles and responsibilities of the military over social engineering and non-defense related matters, including climate change, critical race theory, manufactured extremism, and other polarizing policies that weaken our armed forces and discourage our nation's finest men and women from enlisting. Ensuring that many of America's best and brightest continue to choose military service is essential. By far the most significant danger to America from abroad, Miller writes, is China. That communist regime is undertaking a historic military buildup, which could result in a nuclear force that matches or exceeds America's own nuclear arsenal. Resisting Chinese expansionist aims requires a denial defense, whereby we make the subordination of Taiwan or other U.S. allies in Asia prohibitively difficult. However, Miller adds that critically, the United States must be able to do this at a level of cost and risk that Americans are willing to bear. The best gauge of such willingness is congressional approval. Accordingly, we must rediscover and adhere to the founders' wise decision and division of war powers, whereby Congress, the most representative and deliberative branch, decides whether to go to war, and the executive, the most interjective and decisive branch, decides how to carry it out once begun. As the past 75 years have repeatedly demonstrated in different ways, from Korea to Vietnam to Iraq to Afghanistan, we depart from our constitutional design at our peril. Miller writes that we must treat missile defense as a top priority, ensure that more of our weapons are made in America, reform the budgeting process, and sustain an efficient and effective counterterrorism enterprise. Across all of our efforts, we must keep in mind that part of our peace through strength is knowing when to fight. As George Washington warned nearly 2 centuries ago, we must continue to be on guard against being drawn into conflicts that do not justify great loss of American treasure or significant shedding of American blood. At the same time, we must be prepared to defend our interests and meet challenges where and when they arise. An effective diplomatic corps is central to defending our interests and influencing world events, whereas most military personnel have had leftist priorities imposed from above. The problem at stake comes largely from within. Former State Department Director of Policy Planning, Kieron Skinner, writes in Chapter 6, large swaths of the State Department's workforce are left-wing and predisposed to disagree with conservative president's policy agenda and vision. She adds that the department possesses a belief that it is an independent institution that knows what is best for the United States, set its own foreign policy, and does not need direction from an elected president, a view that does not align with the Constitution. The solution to this problem is strongly political leadership. Skinner writes, the next administration must take swift and decisive steps to reforge the department into a lean and functional diplomatic machine that serves the president and thereby the American people. Because the Senate has been extraordinarily lax in fulfilling its constitutional obligation to confirm presidential appointees, she recommends putting appointees into acting roles until such time as the Senate confirms them. Skinner writes that states should stop also skirting the Constitution's treaty, making requirements and stop enforcing agreements as treaties. It encourages more trade with allies, particularly with Great Britain, and less with adversaries. And it should implement a sovereign Mexico policy as our neighbor has functionality lost its sovereignty to muscular criminal cartels that effectively run the country. In Africa, Skinner writes, the US should focus on core security, economic and human rights, rather than impose radical abortion and pro-LGBT initiatives. Divisive symbols such as the rainbow flag or the Black Lives Matter flag have no place next to stars and stripes at our embassies. And I feel like I've read this already, so give me one moment. Yes, I have. Okay. Give me one moment here because I believe and I'm glad I saw that. See? So everything happens for a reason. And I was unable to get through to this file. So that give me a moment and let me reset because I was like, I've read about this already. So what I know that we're going to start with, I was reading about chapter 3, certain personnel agencies, Donald Devine, Dennis Dean Clerk, and Paul Dans yesterday. So give me one brief moment. Let me just take a look at the pages here because I want to make sure that I am reading the right information. No point. I don't want to reread the information I read yesterday because that is defeating the purpose. Give me one moment. Hopefully everything is. Take a look here. And so you're able to read the document yourself too by clicking the link. And they have the mandate for leadership, but I'm trying to find the online copy where we can quickly and easily go. I want to make sure that I was on the right page. And I believe yesterday when I ended part 2 that I stated I was on page 120 and that felt redundant. So I am now on the mandate for leadership, the conservative promise. And I just don't want to double read because we have to reach out. Our next part is to break everything down into 60-second tidbits and to provide this information so that people can read it, so that people will pay attention. And so how we're going to do that is in 60-second bits. And like I said, I didn't want to reread something that because it's 900 pages. So we are not going to do that. Give me one moment and here we are. We're on Department of Defense, Christopher Miller. So that is where we're going to pick up the reading. Sorry about that delay. Okay, so Department of Defense, give me one brief moment. I do apologize. And while I take this brief moment, share in the community what's in regards to a random act of kindness you can help build for someone else. Give me one brief moment and I'll be right back with you. Thank you. We're going to try to educate. See, the great thing about having digital real estate is having video. So, and what up though, Jeff? Thank you so much for the actual comments. And Charlene Sanders, thank you so much for the comments as well. The video shows I'm on page 152. Ha! So I had to go take a quick look because again, I didn't want to slight anybody, but at the same time, I didn't want to reread something. I mean, I'm not going to put my insights and views on what I'm reading. I'm going to just provide what I'm reading, but I didn't want to provide the reading twice. So I am on page 152. Ha! And I just had to go really quick and check back to the great thing about having social media. You know what? You don't have to remember anything anymore. Like the greatest thing about, and this is real talk. Let me go to full screen. You can now not have to remember things. Like the one thing that I love about this digital real estate journey and building this billionaire journey with myself, and this being day 60. If you look at my YouTube or my Facebook or any of my pages, you'll see the growth. You can see it yourself. Like it's something that you can start if you just consistently start doing something. So you see the growth and confidence within yourself. Like, dang, that was me a year ago. That was me 2 years ago. Jesus, that was embarrassing 3 years ago. So again, you understand how to kind of see that growth happens. And when you can actually reach your billionaire journey, when you see where you come from and where you're going, the type of people that you can now say no to and say yes to. Things like what I just did, I would have just kept reading just because it's live. No, take a moment, pause, ponder, pray, and proceed, but proceed with smartness because I have a plan in place. This is not something I'm just randomly doing to show action online to do like a TikTok or something like this. This is something real to help people. So I say all that to say, if you want to watch all the way from that page to 120, watch day yesterday, part 2. So I covered that in part 2. I go all the way up to page 152 until 10 p.m. And then I say, okay, Adriane Mays, that's enough. So what we're going to do here today is pick up on page 152. And if you need any questions or anything like that, I am just so excited that you'll be able to post that into the community. And as well as now knowing that we are on page 152, and I am going to pick up there with the U.S. Cyber Command. Ha! So what the beautiful thing, the little small things that you enjoy in life. Do you see, if you could see and leave in the comments, if you appreciate the small wins like that, like, ha, save me 30 pages of reading, ha, ha. So again, you want to do random acts of kindness, but you also have things to do. Okay. It's a money-making process. I'm just saying, your girl is crazy, but I love myself. So anyway, so I love that little rant was fun. U.S. Cyber Command. U.S. Cybercom was established in 2010 by the Department of page 152 out of 922. U.S. and page 119 on the actual PDF. U.S. Cyber Command. U.S. Cybercom was established in 2010 by the Department of Defense to unify the direction of cyberspace operations, strengthen DoD cyberspace capabilities, and integrate and enhance U.S. cyber expertise. Cyber capabilities and threats are evolving rapidly. Accordingly, a conservative administration should be especially sensitive to and prepared to meet the challenges presented by bureaucratic silos, inappropriately rigid tactical doctrine, and strategically thinking historical tendency to lag behind technological capability. The preliminary evidence from the war in Ukraine suggests that existing cyber doctrine and certain capability and target assumptions may be incorrect or misplaced. The following recommendations, therefore, presuppose that we're well and rigorous lessons learned, analysis and review of existing U.S. doctrine in light of the battlefield evidence, needed reforms, ensure that U.S. cybercom is properly focused. Mission creep is leading to wasteful overlap with the Department of Homeland Security, National Security Agency, Department of Defense, and Central Intelligence Agency. Separate U.S. cybercom from the National Security Agency per congressional direction. Number 2, conduct effective offensive cyber effects operations at the tactical and strategic levels. Number 3, expand defensive cyber effects operations authorized by President Trump's classified National Security Presidential Memorandum 13, United States Cyber Operations Policy. And number 4, end U.S. cybercom's participation in federal efforts to fortify U.S. elections to eliminate the perception that DoD is engaging in partisan politics. Increase U.S. cybercom's effectiveness. Number 1, accelerate the integration of cyber and electronic warfare, EW doctrine, and capabilities abiding by the time-tested norms of combined arms warfare. Number 2, mandate that development teams will include both coders and soldiers, air crews, and sailors with kinetic experience at the platoon level. Number 3, break the paradigm of cyber authorities held at the strategic level. Number 4, increase cyber resilience by, for example, protecting the nuclear command, control, and communications network and the Air Force's Cyber Resiliency Office for Weapons Systems, CROWS. Number 5, expand coordination of joint operations with allies. Number 6, implement the Government Accountability Office's recommendation that the DoD Chief Information Officer, Commander of U.S. Cybercom, and Commander of Joint Force Headquarters, DoD Information Network, align policy and system requirements to enable DoD to have enterprise-wide visibility of cyber incidents, reporting to support tactical, strategic, and military strategies for response. Rationalize strategy and doctrine. Number 1, update the October 2022 National Security Strategy to define DoD roles and responsibilities beyond existing platitudes. Number 2, apply traditional deterrence strategies and principles for using cyber EW in retaliation for foreign cyber attacks and or EW actions against U.S. infrastructure and citizens. Special Operations Forces. Even though America's conventional war in Afghanistan was a failure, Special Operations Forces of the United States Special Operation Command executed an extremely effective counterterrorism campaign. There has not been another major attack on the homeland. Global terrorist threats are reduced and managed. Collaboration with international partners is effective, and units under USSOCOM are the most capable and experienced warfighters in 2 generations. There's a movement to reduce the scope and scale of USSOCOM's mission, and there is in favor of other service priorities in great power competition. This will be a mistake because USSOCOM can be employed effectively in great power competition. It makes sense to capitalize on USSOCOM's experience and repurpose its mission to include irregular warfare within the context of great power competition, thereby providing a robust organization that is capable of achieving strategic effects that are critical both to our national defense and to the defense of our allies and partners around the globe. Irregular warfare should be used proactively to prevent state and non-state actors from negatively affecting U.S. policies and objectives while simultaneously strengthening our regional partnerships. If we maintain irregular warfare's traditional focus on non-state actors, we limit ourselves to addressing only the symptoms. Non-state actors, not the problem themselves, China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. Needed reforms. Make irregular warfare a cornerstone of security strategy. The U.S. can project strength through unified action with our interagency allies and partners by utilizing irregular warfare capabilities synchronized with elements of national power. Broadly redefining irregular warfare to address current state and non-state actors is critical to countering irregular threats that range from the Chinese use of economic warfare to Russian disinformation and Islamist terrorism. A broad definition of irregular warfare in the national security strategy would allow for a whole of government approach, thereby providing resources and capabilities to counter threats and ultimately serve as credible deterrents at the strategic and tactical levels. Define irregular warfare as a means by which the United States uses all elements of national power to project influence abroad to counter state adversaries, defeat hostile non-state actors, and deter wider conflict and maintain peace in great power competition. Number two, characterize the state and non-state irregular threats facing the U.S. by region in the national security strategy. Number three, direct that irregular warfare resources, capabilities, and strategies be incorporated directly into the overall national defense strategy instead of being relegated to a supporting document. And number four, establish an irregular warfare center of excellence to help DoD train, equip, and organize to conduct irregular warfare as a core competency across the spectrum of competition, crisis, and conflict. Counter China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, globally. DoD, in conjunction with the interagency allies and partner nations, must work proactively to counter China's BRI around the globe. Number one, task USS OCOM and corresponding organizations in the Pentagon with conceptualizing, resourcing, and executing regionally based operations to counter the BRI with a focus on nations that are key to our energy policy, international supply chains, and our defense industrial base. Number two, use regional and global information operations to highlight Chinese violations of exclusive economic zones, violations of human rights and coercion along Chinese fault lines in Xinjiang's province, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, in addition to China's weaponization of sovereign debt. And number three, directly counter Chinese economic power with all elements of national power in North America, Central America, and the Caribbean to maintain maritime freedom of movement and protect the digital infrastructure of nations in the region. Establish credible deterrence through irregular warfare to protect the homeland. A whole of government approach and willingness to employ cyber, information, economic, and counter-terrorist irregular warfare capabilities should be utilized to protect the homeland. Include the designation of USS OCOM as lead for the execution of irregular warfare against hostile state and non-state actors in the national defense strategy. Number two, demonstrate a willingness to employ offensive cyber capabilities against adversaries who conduct cyber attacks against U.S. infrastructure, businesses, personnel, and governments. Number three, employ a name and shame approach by making information regarding the names of entities that target democratic processes and international norms available in a transparent manner. Number four, work with the interagency to employ economic warfare, lawfare, and diplomatic pressure against hostile state and non-state actors. And number five, maintain the authorities necessary for an aggressive counterterrorism posture against threats to the homeland. Nuclear deterrence. Nuclear deterrence is one of the most critical elements of U.S. national security as it forms a backstop to U.S. military forces. Every operational plan relies on the assumption that nuclear deterrence holds. Ever since the US first acquired nuclear weapons, administrations of both parties have pursued a strategy designed to deter nuclear and non-nuclear attack, assure allies, and in the event of nuclear employment, restore deterrence at the lowest possible cost to the US today. However, America's ability to meet these goals is increasingly challenged by the growing nuclear threats posed by our adversaries. China is pursuing a strategic breakout of its nuclear forces, significantly shifting the nuclear balance and forcing the US to learn how to deter two nuclear peer competitors, China and Russia, simultaneously for the first time in history. Russia is expanding its nuclear arsenal and using the threat of nuclear employment as a coercive tactic in its war on Ukraine. North Korea is advancing its nuclear capabilities. Iran is inching closer to nuclear capability. Meanwhile, all US nuclear capabilities and the infrastructure on which they rely date from the Cold War are in dire need of replacement. The next administration will need to focus on continuing the effort to modernize the nuclear triad while updating our strategy and capabilities to meet the challenges presented by a more threatening nuclear environment. Needed reforms: prioritize nuclear modernization. All components of the nuclear triad are far beyond their intended lifetimes and will need to be replaced over the next decade. This effort is required for the US to maintain its nuclear triad and will be the bare minimum needed to maintain US strategic nuclear deterrence. Number one, accelerate the timelines of critical modernization programs, including the Sentinel missile, long-range standoff weapon, LRSO, Columbia class, ballistic missile submarine, the B-21 bomber, and F-35 dual-capable aircraft. Reject any congressional proposals that would further extend the service lives of U.S. capabilities as the Minuteman III ICBM. Ensure sufficient funding for warhead life extension programs, LEP, including the B-6112, W-80-4, W-87-1 mod, and W-88-370. We're going to take a quick intermission break, and we're going to bring you to Adriane Mays' YouTube page to bring you to a quick intermission where we're going to, where I have to complete my 11 o'clock, thank you, September 30th, 2023. And Adriane owning it, honestly, and designing my reality and seriously living through this transformation and building this billionaire journey. So while I do what is required of me, I'm going to have you literally take a look at the billionaire plan. And this is where you can find all of the videos from yesterday, as well as Project 2025, and building this billionaire plan of learning how to part one as well as part two can be found here on the at Adriane Mays channel. So while I go fulfill this requirement, I'm going to go ahead and play a video from the NFL conference. I'm going to play a video somewhere that's going to allow me to do this quickly. So we'll let you play this here. What up, though? Adriane Mays, Detroit One Product Educate. What do you think about this idea? So I would do Shakeology now, and I had a meeting with Carlos Silveri and BJ Kanwar of Unicity International, and seeing Rav Malik making $1 million per month, showing a process that works. So, I do the premium lead delivery service with Being and Change LLC, meaning helping people with getting more business into their automation with AI and setting up a system. So looking at BJ Kanwar's system, he has Linktree. Looking at Carlos Silveri, he has Linktree. And of course, they have the social media. Looking at Rav Malik, he has Linktree. But with Go High Level and all the different options you can actually provide, a premium lead delivery service will be simple and easy. So once I actually join, my idea is to come in with the genius and help other people and they're already at $1 million per month. What do you think about that idea? Leave it in the comments. I can, I will, I must improve their system. Let's go. What up? Adriane Mays, AI Genius. Thank you for that quick, brief intermission break. Had to go ahead and take care of my 11 o'clock obligation. So we're going to jump right back in to the reading of Project 2025 Mandate for Leadership Live with Adriane Mays, Part 3. We are currently on page 124 in the manual on the PDF, but 157 out of 922 if you're following along with the 900-page PDF as well. So currently develop the sea-launched Crystal Missile Nuclear SLCM-N. In 2018, the Trump administration proposed restoring the SLCM-N to help fill a growing gap in U.S. non-strategic capabilities and improve deterrence against limited nuclear attacks. The Biden administration canceled this program in its 2022 posture review (NPR). The next president should support and accelerate by funding for development of the SLCM-N with the goal of deployment by the end of the decade. Account for China's nuclear expansion. To ensure its ability to deter both Russia and the growing Chinese nuclear threat, the U.S. will need more than the bare minimum of nuclear modernization. President Biden's 2022 NPR described the problem but proposed no recommendations to restore or maintain nuclear deterrence. Number one, consider procuring more modernized nuclear systems, such as the Sentinel missile or LRSO than currently planned. Number two, improve the ability of the U.S. to utilize the triad's upload capacity in a case of crisis. And number three, review what capabilities, in addition to the SLCM-N, for example, non-strategic weapons or new warhead designs are needed to deter unique Chinese threat. Restore the nuclear infrastructure. The United States must restore its necessary nuclear infrastructure so that it's capable of producing and maintaining nuclear weapons. Number one, accelerate the effort to restore plutonium pit production, which is essential both for modern warhead programs and for recapitalizing the stockpile. Number two, continue to invest in rebuilding infrastructure, including facilities at the national laboratories to support nuclear weapons development. Number three, restore readiness to test nuclear weapons at the Nevada National Security Site to ensure the ability of the U.S. to respond quickly to asymmetric technology surprises. Currently orient arms control. The U.S. should agree to arms control agreements only if they help to advance the interests of the U.S. and its allies. Reject proposals for nuclear disarmament that are contrary to the goal of bolstering deterrence. Number two, pursue arms control as a way to secure the national security interests of the U.S. and its allies rather than as an end in itself. And number three, prepare to compete in order to secure U.S. interests should arms control efforts continue to fail. Missile defense. Missile defense is a critical component of the U.S. national security architecture. It can help to deter attack by instilling doubt that an attack will work as intended, take adversary cheap shots off the table, and limit the perceived value of missiles as tools of coercion. It also allows space for diplomacy during a crisis and can protect U.S. and allied forces, critical assets, and populations if deterrence fails. Adversaries are relying increasingly on missiles to achieve their aims. China and Russia, in addition to their vast and growing ballistic missile inventories, are deploying new hypersonic glide vehicles and investing in new ground-launched, air-launched, and sea-launched cruise missiles that uniquely challenge the United States in different domains. North Korea has pursued an aggressively missile testing program as becoming increasingly belligerent towards South Korea and Japan. Iran continues to maintain a missile arsenal that is capable of striking U.S. and allied assets in the Middle East and Europe, and its rocket launches demonstrate that it either has or is developing the ability to build ICBMs. Missile defense has been under-prioritized and underfunded in recent years. In the light of these growing threats, the incoming administration should treat missile defense as a top priority. Needed reforms. Champion the benefits of missile defense. Despite its deterrence and damage limitation benefits, Opponents argue incorrectly that U.S. missile defense is destabilizing because it threatens Russian and Chinese South second strike capabilities. Number one, reject claims made by the left that missile defense is destabilizing while acknowledging that Russia and China are developing their own advanced missile defense systems. Number two, commit to keeping homeland missile defense off the table and any arms, control negotiations with Russia and China, strengthen homeland ballistic missile defense. The United States currently deploys 44 ground-based interceptors, GBIs, as part of its ground-based mid-course defense, GMD system, to defend the homeland against North Korea. But as North Korea improves its missile program, this system is at risk of falling behind the threat. Number one, buy at least 64 of the next generation interceptor NGI, which is more advanced than the GBI, for an eventual uniform fleet of interceptors. The Biden administration currently plans to buy only 20. Number two, consider additional steps to strengthen the GMD system, such as a layered missile defense or a third interceptor site on the East Coast. Increase the development of regional missile defense. As the Ukraine conflict amply demonstrates, U.S. regional missile defense capabilities are very limited. The United States has been unable to supply our partners reliably with any capabilities, and the number and types of regional missile defense platforms are less than the U.S. needs for its own defense. The U.S. should prioritize procurement of more regional defense systems, such as Theater High Altitude Area Defense, THAAD, Standard Missile 3, and Patriot missiles. Change U.S. missile defense policy. Historically, the U.S. has chosen to rely solely on deterrence to address the Russian and Chinese ballistic missile threats to the homeland and to use homeland missile defense only against rogue nations. Number one, abandon the existing policy of not defending the homeland against Russian and Chinese ballistic missiles and focus on how to improve defense as the Russian and Chinese missile threats increase at an unprecedented rate. Number two, invest in future advanced missile defense technologies like directed energy or space-based missile defense that can defend against more numerous missile threats. Invest in new track and intercept capabilities. The advent of hypersonic missiles and increased numbers of crucial missile arsenals by threat actors poses new challenges to our missile defense capabilities. Number one, invest in cruise missile defense of the homeland. Number two, accelerate the program to deploy space-based sensors that can detect and track missiles flying on non-ballistic trajectories. And number three, accelerate the glide phase interceptor, which is intended to counter hypersonic weapons. So that, my friends, is the end of that section. Yay, look at us making progress. So we are now on Part 5, Department of Homeland Security, Ken Cusinelli. We're going to take a brief, because I like that intermission break, and I need that brief break. Because I do want to thank again everyone for tuning in to the reading. Before I jump back into the next one, I'm going to take a quick 2-minute timeout and literally just to grab some water so that I can be able to be clear. And I'm going to play it while I'm away. Every day, what I do on a daily basis is, let me go live here on my full screen. On a daily basis, building this billionaire journey from the past 60 days is building a vlog. So in other words, daily, you have to have some type of consistency. So reading for 30 minutes. I do my Power Ranger meeting for an hour every day. I do my 90 seconds, which is check out my page and I'll show you what the 90 seconds is for my health and fitness. I try to eat 3 times a day. I do my Shakeology right now until Unicity International, that coming soon. But I do that on a consistent basis, as well as, go hard, because money making activities, trying to build a billionaire brand, showing business owners how to get involved with the Random Acts and Kindness virtual celebration, as well as empowering, modeling, innovating, and prospering, and showing people what can be. So being in this digital marketing journey and being a digital marketing guru over the past 3 years, building on this educational platform, it hasn't been easy. But when you're building each piece and you want to help people in regards to AI and automation and building systems and understanding that you can buy your time back and showing people how to do so, utilizing systems such as Go High Level and their automation and setting that up for people, as well as using a deal.ai with scroll stopping ads with the marketing packages and to show the videos that can be done. And sponsors can literally take advantage of this by getting involved with the random virtual celebration September 11th that we're celebrating with CCC Because We Care Foundation. So I'm gonna take a brief second here and literally just kind of show you the vlog as, you know, now on this part 3, being able to not just leave you hanging when I need to take a break. I can actually show you some content that has been curated on the Adriane Mays YouTube channel. So you can set up a YouTube channel. This is a one money-making activity that is free of charge for you to do. And over time, you can build over 2,100 videos, but building your billionaire brand with AI and become your own chief executive human. So today, I actually posted a video, as I do every day. You can actually check out part 1 and part 2 yesterday of Project 2025, the 900-page mandate for leadership read live by Adriane Mays. And part 3 we're within right now. And so we're going to take a brief moment and just kind of take a look at the vlog they're written while I go and take this.
Check in the comments on how to join.
Go ahead and get the
line. By design, that 2007 line, day 60 of the billionaire journey of Adriane Mays, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, 60 to by design, that 2007 line, random acts of kindness on this post Independence Day, building a billionaire dream, reading a tax-free wealth, and Project 2025. A journey of knowledge and random acts of kindness. On Independence Day yesterday, on day 59 of the billionaire journey, God tapped me on my shoulder and said, "Hey, Adriane Mays, we're going to take this actual Independence Day, July 4th, 2024, and share with those that are not able to read this 900-page mandate that if Donald Trump gets into office, what it means. No type of fluff or Adriane Mays insight tied into it, just the Project 2025 that will be implemented if in November, Donald Trump actually takes office. So on a mission to perform this random, unique acts of kindness, reading aloud this Project 2025, I always raise my hand for something and get myself ahead of something before I say I'm going to do something, then I get into it. Then I'm like, dang, Adriane. So yesterday, reading this 900-page comprehensive guide containing crucial insights on wealth creation, financial strategies, health and wellness, and community changes and travel experience adjustments, and the impact of artificial intelligence. Why this matters is because the inspiration kind of struck me when building this billionaire plan and reading Tax-Free Wealth on a daily basis. I read 30 minutes. I do my affirmations for 30 minutes. I make sure I do my 90 seconds daily fitness for my workout. And you have to feed your mind with the billionaire mindset. And so in doing and reading the Tax-Free Wealth, How to Build Massive Wealth by Permanently Lowering Your Taxes by Tom Wheelwright, this book delves into depreciation, amortization, assets, and the evolving of tax laws, prompting me to look into the different changes of how to build wealth, which led me to looking and reading the Project 2025 in addition to Taraji P. Henson putting it to my attention at the BET Awards. So especially considering the potential political shifts if Donald Trump takes office, it piqued my interest. How can we build this billionaire plan? And speaking of the next 2 years, and looking at your housing and looking at your owning your family, your faith, your fitness, your finance, and literally trying to create that billionaire plan. So you have to know where you are so you know where you're going. So despite it being free, this access document is free online, but also within the Random Acts of Kindness community. Check in the comments on how to join. Free community. But Adriane's my initiative here, Adriane Mays, is to ensure that everyone has a fair opportunity, even those who won't or can't read it, can grasp the critical information. So the Random Acts of Kindness on Independence Day started around 10:30 yesterday when God tapped me on the shoulder
And around 1 o'clock, I started reading the document aloud. So I have two parts yesterday and read about 120 pages, dedicating hours to this task, determined to provide this valuable service of community. And I'm not done. So by the end of the day, I read about 10 o'clock last night. I read about 120 pages out loud, leaving about 780 plans to go. And Adrian plans to continue reading that document today and breaking the content down as what I've discovered in this random acts of kindness journey as I've been reaching out to small business owners regarding donations and charitable donations and sponsorship for the Random Acts of Kindness virtual celebration to be held September 11, 2024, that a lot of business owners don't even know about charitable donations, what effect that has on their bottom line, and even how the benefit of donating and sponsoring events. So all of the Project 2025, it encompasses some of the answers that I was consisting of the last few weeks, talking to these small business owners and learning, helping them with their billionaire plan to make it easier for people to digest this information. So, reflecting on the journey, I'm learning that the act of kindness, I mean, it's within my journey, modeling my empowering modeling and innovation and prospering. It's going to be great for me, right? But if you can show someone else how to do so and finish what you start, you're showing people the commitment to completion. So, Adrian Mays is committed to completing the reading of the entire document, not only just to complete it, but also to be able to process the information and to share it with people and share it with the community in regards to different conversations that I actually withhold. So, for personal growth, this journey isn't just about Adrian Mays sharing information, it's about the community and growing within it and humility. So, Adrian Mays acknowledges the importance of aligning your strong will with God's plan and understanding the guidance and transforming your thoughts into assets and understanding how this can work. So, human connection, emphasizing the connection between myself here in Detroit, Michigan, what up, though, and being in Canton, Michigan, reaching out to these business owners, and in Westland, Michigan, and in Novi, Michigan, and literally a higher power believes that, hey, the Project 2025, understanding the mandate for leadership will help. So Adrian believes that the distance between myself and God is zero when you get that ego out the way. My ego, my plan, Adrian Mays' plan, it's out there. But God is guiding me the right way each day, and I take on those 24 hours strongly, recognizing the value of people pleasing is not what you're supposed to do, not for validation. And I want the genuine connection of love that God provides, the true love and support that God provides in each and every moment. So, encouragement and accepting gratitude and love for others, it's okay because you're exactly where you're supposed to be today on day 60 in the billionaire journey as long as you continue the mission. You have to keep going. So, Adrian Mays, day 60, it's going to resume today, reading the document until the entire document is read. These bite sized pieces and segments will be posted on Adrian May's social media, promoting random acts of kindness and spreading awareness about Project 2025. And jump into the community and leave a 60-second video sharing what has you shared with a random act of kindness about 2025. Stay connected. So follow, subscribe, share, please, this actual mission, because the mission for CCC Because We Care Foundation, celebrating 15 years in the community, September 11th, 2024. We're going to have that virtual celebration highlighting all these sponsors and companies that have come on board to build and grow with the actual community. So stay tuned, participate, submit your own acts of kindness ideas to the community. Support us by helping make a greater impact and becoming a sponsor. And remember, the distance between you and your higher power is yourself. Put it to zero. Get that ego out the way. I can, I will, I must empower communities through kindness and knowledge. Adrian Mays, president of CCC Because We Care Foundation. You may hear me on the phone, giving you a call or a text message or email showing you this premium lead delivery service. This is good for you and in your business to actually engage more people, more leads, and building campaigns to show people what you're offering in regards to your business. So it's a re-engineering way to show people the premium lead delivery service of what you need to show the audience and build your own community. Build people of those that enjoy what you're sharing. So Adrian Mays, AI Genius, signing off. What up, dope? Detroit, one product, educate. Adrian Mays, I can, I will, I must. Let's go. This is
Kind of cool, right? Looking at yourself. I thought that was pretty cool and a good intermission break. So, thank you for so much for tuning in today live with Adriane Mays, part 3 of Project 2025 Mandate for Leadership, the reading live. And the purpose of this reading is to help those of random acts of kindness, to help those that maybe not be able to read this amazing document, that maybe if Donald Trump takes office, we'll structure some of our lives. So getting this in no type of additions or ad libs of Adriane Mays, just getting it in front of the community and picking up where we left off. Before that, hopefully you enjoyed that intermission of what I do on a daily basis of the live vlog. But jumping right back into where we were, taking action of the Project 2025 Mandate for Leadership Live reading by Adriane Mays, we were on chapter 5. Department of Homeland Security, Ken Susanielli. Our primary recommendation is that the president pursue legislation to dismantle Department of Homeland Security, DHS. After 20 years, it has not gelled into one DHS. Instead, its various components, different missions, have outweighed its decades-long attempt to function as one department, rendering the whole disjointed rather than cohesive. Breaking up the department along its mission lines would facilitate mission focus and provide opportunities to reduce overhead and achieve more limited government. In lieu of a status quo, DHS, we recommend that, number 1, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP, be combined with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, the Department of Health and Human Services, HAS, Office of Refugee Resettlement, ORR, and the Department of Justice, DOJ, Executive Office for Immigration Review, EOIR, and Office of Immigration Litigation, OIL, into a standalone border and immigration agency at the cabinet level. More than 100,000 employees, making it the third largest department measured by manpower. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, be moved to the Department of Transportation. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, be moved to the Department of the Interior, or if combined with CISA, to the Department of Transportation. The U.S. Coast Guard, USCG, be moved to DOJ, and in time of full-scale war, for example, threatening the homeland, to the Department of Defense, DOD. Alternatively, USCG should be moved to DOD for all purposes. The U.S. Secret Service, USSS, be divided in two, with the protective element moved to DOJ and the final enforcement element moved to the Department of the Treasury. The Transportation Security Administration, TSA, be privatized. The Science and Technology Directorate, S&T, be moved to DOD, and the Office of Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction be moved to the FBI. All of the remaining supporting components could be dismantled because their functions already exist in the moving components as well as the receiving departments. Cutting these costs would save the American taxpayers significant sums. Unless and until this dismantling recommendation is pursued and achieved, however, DHS will statutorily continue to exist, and it needs many reforms. Accordingly, we now turn to recommend changes in DHS as it exists now. Mission statement. The Department of Homeland Security protects the American homeland from and prepares for terrorism and other hazards in both the physical and cyber realms, provides for secure and free movement of trade and travel, and enforce U.S. immigration laws impartially. Overview. The Department of Homeland Security, DHS, was created in the aftermath of the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, and subsequent mailings of anthrax spores. The Homeland Security Act of 2002, which created the department, states that DHS's primary mission is to prevent terrorist attacks within the U.S., reduce the nation's vulnerability to terrorism, minimize the damage from and assist in the recovery from and any terrorist attacks, prepare and respond to natural and man-made crises and emergencies, and monitor connections between illegal drug trafficking and terrorism, coordinate efforts to sever such connections, and interdict illegal drug trafficking. Unfortunately for our nation, the federal government's newest department became like every other federal agency, bloated, bureaucratic, and expensive. It also lost sight of its mission priorities. DHS has also suffered from the left's workness and weaponization against Americans whom the left perceives as its political opponents. To truly secure the homeland, a conservative administration needs to return the department to the right mission, the right size, and the right budget. This would include reorganizing the department and shifting significant resources away from several supporting components to the essential operational components. Prioritizing border security and immigration enforcement, including detention and deportation, is critical if we are to regain control of the border, repair the historic damage done by the Biden administration, return to a lawful and orderly immigration system, and protect the homeland from terrorism and public safety threats. This also includes consolidating the pieces of the fragmented immigration system into one agency to fulfill the mission more efficiently. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, is a DHS component that the left has weaponized to censor speech and affect elections at the expense of securing the cyber domain and critical infrastructure, which are threatened daily. A conservative administration should return CISA to its statutory and important but narrow mission. The bloated DHS bureaucracy and budget, along with the wrong priorities, provide real opportunities for a conservative administration to cut billions in spending and limit government's role in Americans' lives. These opportunities, including privatizing TSA screening and the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, National Flood Insurance Program, reforming FEMA emergency spending to shift the majority of preparedness and response costs to states and localities instead of the federal government, eliminating most of DHS's grant programs, and removing all unions in the department for the national security purposes and security purposes. A successful DHS would secure and control the border, thoroughly enforce immigration laws, correctly and efficiently adjudicate immigration benefit applications while rejecting fraudulent claims, secure the cyber domain and collaborate with critical infrastructure sectors to maintain their security, provide states and localities with a limited federal emergency response and preparedness, select our coast and our economic zones, protect political leaders, their families, and visiting heads of state or government, and oversee transportation security. Office of the Secretary, SEC. In the next administration, the Office of the Secretary should take on the following key issues and challenges to ensure the effective operation of DHS. Expansion of dedicated political personnel. The Secretary of Homeland Security is a presidentially appointed and Senate-confirmed political appointee, but for budgetary reasons, he or she has historically been unable to fund a dedicated team of political appointees. A key first step for the secretary to improve front office functions is to have his or her own dedicated team of political appointees selected and vetted by the Office of Presidential Personnel, which is not reliant on detailers from other parts of the department to help ensure the completion of the next president's agenda. An aggressive approach to Senate-confirmed leadership positions. While Senate confirmation is constitutionally necessary requirement for appointing agency leadership, the next administration may need to take a novel approach to the confirmations process to ensure an adequate and rapid transition. For example, the next administration arguably should place its nominees for key positions into similar positions as actings. For example, putting in a person to serve as the senior official performing the duties of the commissioner of CBP while that person is going through the confirmation process to direct ICE or become the secretary. This approach would both guarantee implementation of the day one agenda and equip the department for potential emergency situations while still honoring the confirmation requirement. The department should also look to remove lower level, but nevertheless important positions that currently require Senate confirmation from the confirmation requirement. Although this effort will require legislation, it might also be mooted in the event of legislation that closes portions of the department that currently have Senate confirmed leadership. Clearer, more durable, and political only line of succession. Based on previous experience, the department needs legislation to establish a more durable but political oriented line of succession for agency decision-making purposes. The ideal sequence for line of succession is certainly debatable, except that in circumstances where a career employee holds a leadership position in the department, that position should be deemed vacant for line of succession purposes, and the next eligible political appointee in the sequence should assume acting authority. Further, individuals wielding acting secretary authority should have explicit authority to finalize agency actions, including regulations, to ensure that the department's homeland security mission is fulfilled. Soft closure of unnecessary offices. Pending a possible presidential a presidential decision to shrink or eliminate DHS itself, the next administration will still have the obligation to protect the homeland as required by law. The secretary therefore should use his or her inherent discretionary leadership authority to soft close ineffective and problematic corners of the department. While those corners are to be determined, the secretaries could shift personnel, funding, and operational responsibility to mission essential components of the department, including the Office of the Secretary itself. This effort not only would make the department more efficient, but also would support a legislative move to shrink or dismantle the department by shrinking that the agency can fulfill national security, critical functions without its current bloated bureaucracy. Restructuring and redistribution of career personnel. To strengthen political decision-making and ensure that taxpayer dollars are being used legally and efficiently, the secretary should make major changes in the distribution of career personnel throughout the department. For example, personnel from parts of the department undergoing soft closure could be redistributed to what will be workload-intensive corners of the department, including national security, critical, and transparency functions. All personnel with law enforcement capacity should be removed immediately from office billets and deployed to field billets to maximize law enforcement capacity. Compliance for grants and other federal funding. The next administration should take steps to restore lawfulness and integrity to the department's massive regimen of federal grant programs, most of which are managed and distributed by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. The secretary should direct FEMA to ensure that all FEMA-issued grant funding for states, localities, and private organizations is going to recipients who are lawful actors, can demonstrate that they are in compliance with federal law, and can show that their mission and actions support the broader Homeland Security mission. All applicants and potential recipients of such grant funding should be required to meet certain preconditions for eligibility, except for receipt of post-disaster or non-humanitarian funding, or should simply be considered ineligible for funding. Such preconditions should include at least the following: certification by applicants that they comply with all aspects of federal immigration laws, including the honoring of all immigration detainers; certification by applicants that they are both registered with E-Verify and using E-Verify in transparent and non-evasive manner. For states and localities, that would include certification that all components of the government and not just the applicant agency are registered with and use E-Verify. If the applicant is a state or locality, commitment by that state or locality to total information sharing in the context of both federal law enforcement and immigration enforcement. This would include access Department of Motor Vehicles and voter registration databases. Non-use of discretionary guesswork, these authorities. to stop facilitating the availability of cheap foreign labor in order to support American workers, particularly poor and middle class American workers, and follow congressional intent, the Secretary should explicitly increase using at least two discretionary authorities as part of his or her broader effort to support American workers. Number one, the Secretary should make it clear that he or she will not use the Secretary's existing discretionary authority to increase the number of H-2B, seasonal non-agricultural visas, above the statutory set cap. Number two, the Secretary should not issue any regulations in support of the H-2 eligible country list, the effect of which would prevent favoring certain foreign nationals seeking an H-2 guest worker visa based simply on their nationality. Restoration of honesty and transparency. The Secretary should use his or her inherent authority as leader of the department to follow up with congressional and other partners to disclose information and provide the transparency that has been obstructed during the Biden administration. The Secretary should proceed from the assumption that congressional inquiries and public information requests were unfulfilled and then to seek to fulfill them. Replacement of the entire Homeland Security Advisory Committee. The Secretary should plan to quickly remove all current members of the Homeland Security Advisory Committee and replace them as quickly as is feasible. U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP. If all immigration agencies are not merged, including USCIS and ORR, then an appropriate third alternative would be to consolidate ICE and CBP to form a combined Border Security and Immigration Agency, BSIA. This would integrate critical interdiction, enforcement, and investigative resources, enhancing coordination and refocusing collective efforts on the vast and complex cross-border threats impacting our nation's health, safety, and national security. It would also simultaneously add efficiencies to our nation's capacity to facilitate the lawful trade and travel. The BSIA should establish clear mission requirements, responsibilities, and mandates under existing law regarding the persistent need for and utilization of U.S. military personnel and resources to assist BSIA with increasing whole of government efforts and long-term strategy to secure our nation's borders effectively. In addition, appropriate elements within the newly created BSIA should be designated as part of the U.S. national security and intelligence community. A conservative administration should eliminate any prohibitive guidance, direction, or mandate from DHS or the administration that curtails or limits CBP from publishing detailed border security and enforcement data, not impacting intelligence, interdiction, and investigative operations, methods, or sources. DHS should issue a regulation mandating that CBP publish accurate and timely border security data readily available to the public on a regular basis that avoid White House and DHS leadership review and approval. The White House should not grant the authority for CBP and DHS executives to utilize component aviation assets under the Office of Air and Marine, OAM. CBP and DHS have worldwide missions with personnel and facilities that are deployed across the globe and in every state in the U.S. With the CBP workforce alone of more than 60,000 people, 240,000 plus for DHS, encompassing more than 1,000 sea, land, and airports, it is essential that the commissioner, deputy commissioner, secretary, and deputy secretary can travel efficiently to facilities to maintain appropriate situational awareness across the department's vast mission set and interact with the expansive workforce. Although CBP operates one of the largest aviation components of any domestic U.S. law enforcement agency, executives are prohibited from utilizing the agency's aviation assets to facilitate the official travel. Executives are required to fly on commercial airlines, and this requirement significantly limits their ability to have classified communications and takes them offline for extended periods of time. Border Patrol, BP, and OAM should be combined within CBP. BP has more than 20,000 personnel, and OAM has approximately 1,800. OAM's assets are dedicated in support of BP operations, the vast majority of the time, yet redundant approvals, strategies, and independent hierarchical commands serve as impediments to efficient and practical resource deployments. CBP should start and restart and expand use of the horseback mounted Border Patrol. As part of this announcement, the Secretary should clear the records and personnel files of those who were falsely accused by Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas of whipping migrants and issue a formal apology on behalf of DHS and CBP. The Secretary should combine the Office of Trade and Trade Relations with the Office of Field Operations. The OT is the smallest of CBP's components, and its operational counterpart, OFO, has a workforce of more than 30,000. OT's function is interwoven with that of its OFO operational counterpart. Combining OT with OFO would achieve streamlined operations and increase OT's capacity and capability by leveraging OFO's expansive resources. CBP, ICE, and USCIS all have the authority to issue notice to appear, NTA, to removable aliens in their presence, which begins removable proceedings. In most instances, CBP should turn illegal aliens over to ICE for detention, and ICE can then issue any needed NTA. CBP should issue NTAs only in limited situations for humanitarian reasons, such as medical emergencies. In addition, CBP should eliminate use of notices to report, NTR, altogether. CBP's established national standards of transport, escort, detention, and search, TEDS, have been widely interpreted and expanded by lower courts. This has resulted in unrealistic and differing detention standards for CBP facilities based on the jurisdiction within which they fall, negatively impacting operations. ICE has suffered similarly. A single nationwide detention standard should be codified that prevents individual states from mandating that federal government agencies adhere to widely expansive and ever-changing sets of standards. Such standards should allow the flexibility to use large numbers of temporary facilities, such as tents. The annual costs associated with establishing and maintaining temporary facilities to address the flow of illegal immigration and associated care, transportation, and processing are prohibitive, and CBP's budget is inadequate. CBP is forced to forego critical mission essential endeavors to fund the additional associated costs. Often, this requires the reprogramming of funding at the DHS level, which has a negative impact on other DHS components operations. This predictable cost that has to be paid from existing CBP and DHS funding levels reduces CBP's operational readiness and ability to accomplish its diverse and critical missions to protect the American people. The next president should request a realistic budget that fully pays for these costs. Increased funding is needed for BP to hire additional support personnel, which would relieve uniformed BP agents from administrative duties associated with processing aliens and allowing them to return to their national security mission. Congress should increase funding for facility upgrades at strategic land ports of entry, POEs, including expanding state-of-the-art technology such as non-intrusive inspection equipment. Today, the cartels exploit the aging facilities and lack of adequate technology to smuggle illicit drugs, contraband, and more successfully through our nation's POEs. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, needed reforms. Since the formation of DHS, ICE has increasingly been tasked with auxiliary missions that have little or nothing to do with either immigration or customs enforcement. To return ICE to its primary mission, any new administration that wishes to restore the rule of law to our immigration enforcement efforts should order ICE to stop closing out pending immigration cases and apply the Immigration and Nationality Act, INA, as written by Congress. The Biden administration closed out tens of thousands of immigration cases that had already been prepared and were slated for expedited removal, processing, or hearings before the U.S. Immigration Court. This misguided action constituted an egregious example of lawlessness that allowed thousands of illegal aliens and other immigration violators to go free in the United States. Direct ICE to stop ignoring criminal aliens identified through the 287G program. Ultimately, Congress should prevent ICE from ignoring criminal aliens identified by local law enforcement agencies that are partners in the 287G program. However, before congressional action, ICE should be directed to take custody of all aliens with records for felonies, crimes of violence, DUIs, previous removals, and any other crime that is considered a national security or public safety threat as defined under current laws. Eliminate T and U visas. Victimization should not be a basis for an immigration benefit. If an alien who is trafficking or crime victim is actively and significantly cooperating with law enforcement as a witness, the S visa is already available and should be used. Pending elimination of the T and U visas, the Secretary should significantly restrict eligibility for each visa to prevent fraud. Issue clear guidance regarding detention and bond for aliens. Thousands of illegal aliens are allowed to bond out of immigration detention only to disappear into the interior of the United States, where many commit crimes and many others disappear, never to be heard from again. This occurs primarily because of poorly worded bond regulations, contradictory bond policy memoranda, and poor practices for managing released aliens and alternatives to the detention program, which requires significant reform. Prioritize national security in the Student and Exchange Visitor Program, SEVP. ICE should end its current cozy deference to educational institutions and remove security risks from the program. This requires working with the Department of State to eliminate or significantly reduce the number of visas issued to foreign students from enemy nations. Most of the foregoing can be accomplished rapidly and effectively through executive action that is both lawful and appropriate. Additionally, ICE should clarify who is responsible for enforcing its criminal and civil authorities. It should also remove self-imposed limitation on its nationwide jurisdiction. Homeland Security Investigations, HSI, special agents in the 1811 series should enforce Title 8 and 18 crimes as the biggest part of their portfolio. Alien smuggling, trafficking, and cross-border crime as defined under Title 8 and Title 18 should be the focus of ICE operations. The role of ICE deportation officers should be clarified. ICE enforcement and removal operations, ERO, should be identified as being primarily responsible for enforcing civil immigration regulations, including as the civil arrest, detention, and removal of immigration violators anywhere in the United States without warrant where appropriate, subject only to the civil warrant requirements of the INA where appropriate. All ICE memoranda identifying sensitive zones where ICE personnel are prohibited from operating should be rescinded. Rely on the good judgment of officers in the field to avoid inappropriate situations. To maximize the efficient use of its resources, ICE should make use of existing expedited removal ER authorities. The agency has limited the use of ER to eligible aliens apprehended within 100 miles of the border. This is not a statutory requirement. New policies. U.S. national security and public safety interests will be well served if ICE were to be combined with CBP and USCIS, as mentioned above. Additionally, ICE, HSI, along with CBP, should be full participants in the intelligence community. The use of Blackie's warrants should be operationalized within ICE. These civil search warrants are commonly used for worksite enforcement when agents have probable cause that illegal aliens are employed at a business. This would streamline investigations. Safeguarding Americans will require not just securing the border, but continuously vetting and investigations of many aliens who exploited President Biden's open border for potentially nefarious purposes, including some Afghan evacuees sent directly to the U.S., including during America's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. Page 142 on the PDF and page 175 out of 922 on the download. Budget. Congress should mandate and fund additional bed space for alien detainees. ICE should be funded for a significant increase in detention space, raising the daily available number of beds to 100,000. Congress should fund ICE for at least 20,000 ERO officers and 5,000 Office of the Public Legal Advisor, OPLA attorneys. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, is the agency tasked with administering the legal immigration and certain temporary visa programs. Needed reforms. Since January of 2021, the USCIS's priorities have been misaligned, and this has transformed it into an open borders agency, ignoring the critical role that it plays in national security, public safety, and safeguarding the integrity of our immigration system. USCIS should be returned to operating as a screening and vetting agency. Regulatory efforts have focused on easing asylum eligibility in a manner that is guaranteed to exacerbate asylum fraud as people surge at the border. Emphasis also has been placed on removing legal barriers to immigration, such as the use of public benefits. These actions violate statutes, erode congressional intent, and provide a significant magnet for continued illegal immigration. Additionally, USCIS resources have been misappropriated to focus more on creating, expanding large-scale parole and temporary status programs that violate the law and are otherwise contrary to congressional intent, instead of focusing on a more secure, efficient process for those who are seeking benefits. The ever-increasing number of applicants filed has made it difficult to vet applications adequately for eligibility, fraud, and specific national security and public safety problems. The Fraud Detection and National Security Directorate, FDNS, is currently a small directorate with assigned officers reporting through the chain of command in the field, and this has led to stovepiping. Lack of coordination is national policy, and inconsistencies throughout the agency. To prioritize vetting and fraud detection, FDNS should undergo a structural shift, adjusting on direct reporting from the field to headquarters, reclassification of leadership, and FDNS directives taking precedence over those of other component entities. Correcting the current misalignment of agency priorities and resources should begin with this primary shift in focus to vetting and fraud detection. These actions would reform the agency, returning it to its screening and vetting mission and protecting the homeland. Other structural challenges should include re-implementation of the USCIS denaturalization unit and efforts to maintain integrity in the system by identifying and prosecuting criminal and civil denaturalization cases in combination with the Department of Justice for aliens who obtain citizenship through fraud or other illicit means. Additionally, USCIS should create a criminal enforcement component within the agency to investigate immigration benefits fraud under Title VIII, perhaps requiring additional legislative and regulatory authorities for the officers themselves, and to prosecute cases through Special Assistant U.S. Attorneys, SAUSAs. With substantive knowledge in the field, particular attention should be given to the addressing increasing incidents of forced labor trafficking and temporary work visa programs. While the Biden regulatory agendas has focused on at least two major rules, the credible fear rule and the public charge rule, USCIS has utilized other policy and internal procedural mechanisms to extend employment authorizations to large groups of people who are in the country without legal status. The agency has taken quiet steps to cut corners on lessen judicatory standards. During a transition period, a complete audit of agency policies, memoranda, and management directives issued during the Biden administration should be completed, and rescission documents should be prepared for issuance within the first few days of the incoming administration. Additionally, regulatory documents should be drafted to review or reverse all regulations promulgated during the Biden administration. New policies. To advance the national interests, the three core immigration agencies, USCIS, ICE, and CBP, should remerge and have immigration elements outside of DHS, such as ORR and of HHS included. The fragmented immigration enforcement framework that developed in the wake of the Homeland Security Act has weakened each agency and should be remediated. Combining these critical agencies would strengthen their capabilities, ensure cooperation, and promote information sharing. Agency responsibilities and delineation of authorities, such as inconsistent use of deferred action and issuance of NTAs by each agency, have long been a point of contention that will be addressed much more easily if they were recombined in a single entity. Alternatively, new policies for USCIS, as it currently exists, should focus on matters that can be addressed through administrative action. The workforce should be realigned and, as necessary, retrained on base eligibility and fraud detection rather than speed and processing. Training should be returned to Federal Law Enforcement Training Centers, FLETC, which would underscore the enforcement role of USCIS as a vetting agency and be rebranded accordingly. Management directives and policies should realign to ensure that this workforce, while adaptable and able to handle the bulk of the USCIS mission, is not allowed to be pulled off mission work to focus on unlawful programs. DACA, mass parole from Afghans, Ukrainians, Venezuelans, etc., which divert resources away from nuclear family and employment programs. The regulatory agendas should include the immediate submission of notices of proposed rulemaking for the Trump administration's public charge rule, including aspects from its original notice of proposed rulemaking, temporary work visa reform, employment authorization reform rules, asylum bars rules, and a third country transit rule. At a minimum, an enhanced regulatory agenda should include rules strengthening the integrity of the asylum system, parole reform, and visa reform that prioritizes relief for victims of heinous crimes and ensures that we protect the truest and most deserving victims of crime. Not all policy changes require formal rulemaking. However, as internal guidance documents are generally exempt under the Administrative Procedure Act, APA, in this sub-regulatory space, USCIS policy memos and operational guidance should reduce the validity of employment authorization documents and in the COVID flexibilities, including the reliance on biometrics reuse. USCIS should also enforce existing regulations by rejecting incomplete applications and petitions, ensuring both that they are completed before accepted for filing and that FBNS signs off on all approved applications and petitions before approval notices are sent to the alien or petitioner. Other efforts should be focused on adjudication, standards returning to nearly 100% interview requirements for all appropriate cases. The incoming administration should spearhead an immigration legislative agenda. focusing on creating a merit-based immigration system that rewards high-skilled aliens instead of the current system that favors extended family based in luck of the draw immigration. To that end, the diversity visa lottery should be repealed. Chain migration should be ended while focusing on the nuclear family, and the existing employment visa program should be replaced with a system to award visas only to the best and brightest. Internal efforts to limit employment authorization should be matched by congressional action to narrow statutory eligibility to work in the United States and mitigate unfair employment competition for U.S. citizens. The oft abused H-1B program should be transformed into an elite program through which employers are vying to bring in only the top foreign workers at the highest wages so as not to depress American opportunities. Additionally, Congress should improve the integrity of the temporary work visa programs, repeal temporary protected status designations, permanently authorize and make mandatory e-verify, and end parole abuse by legislating specific parole standards. USCIS should make it clear that where no court jurisdiction exists, it will not honor court decisions that seek to undermine regulatory, sub-regulatory efforts. Finally, USCIS still requires access to all relevant national security and law enforcement databases in the same vein as any other agency in the intelligence space. This is a key concept that should be addressed as USCIS is returned to functioning primarily as a vetting agency. Budget. USCIS is primarily fee-funded, operating on a revenue derived by those who are seeking immigration benefits, work permits, and naturalization. The total agency budget requested for fiscal year 2023 include both fees and a small appropriation is slightly less than $6 billion. The bulk of funds are derived from application fees through the immigrant examinations fee account. As a general principle, adjudication of applications and petitions should be paid by applicants, not American taxpayers. It is critical that any changes in the budget, even in the wake of a realigned agency combined with ICE and CBP, should retain a fee-funded model. Given the Obama and Biden administration's lack of will, fees should be increased agency-wide to keep in step with inflation and the true cost of the adjudications. The incoming administration should immediately submit a fee rule that reflects such an increase. Aside from an increase in all fees, the rule should drastically limit the availability for fee waivers and should implement a fee for asylum applications. Additionally, Congress should allow for a 10% across the board increase in all fees for all fee rules to account for the fact that the new fee rules always lag behind budget requirements. USCIS should strive to increase opportunities for premium processing, a benefit by which applicants can expedite their processing times. While this places time burdens on adjudicators, it provides an opportunity for a significant influx of money into the agency, which is not currently available. While simply raising fees to the necessary levels to make the agency run efficiently would be preferable without the need for expanded premium processing, this short-term measure should be utilized, particularly if longer team rules are unsuccessful. At least until USCIS is caught up on all case backlogs, all applicants rejected for any benefit or status adjudication should require to leave the U.S. immediately. Ordinarily, process can resume once all case backlogs have been adjudicated. Finally, USCIS should pause the intake of applications in a benefit of category when backlogs in that category become excessive. Once USCIS adjudicators can decrease that caseload to a manageable number, application intake should resume. Personnel. USCIS should be classified as a national security sensitive agency, and all of its employees should be classified as holding national security sensitive positions. Leaks should be investigated and punished as they would in a national security agency. and the union should be decertified. Any employees who cannot accept that change and cannot conform their behavior to the standards required by such an agency should be separated. USCI's DC personnel presence should be skeletal, and agency employees with operational or security roles should be rotated out to offices throughout the United States. These USCIS employees should live and work in the communities that are most affected by their daily duties and decisions. Necessary border and immigration statutory, regulatory, and administrative changes. The current border security crisis was made possible by glaring loopholes in our immigration system. The result was a preventable and predictable historic increase in illegal and admissible encounters along our southern border. This pulled limited resources from the front lines of our nation's borders and away from their national security mission, releasing a vast and complex set of threats into our country. To regain our sovereignty, integrity, and security, Congress must pass meaningful legislation to close the current loopholes and prevent future administration from exploiting them for political gain or personal ideology. Legislative proposals. Title 42, authority is in Title 8. Create an authority akin to the Title 42 Public Health Authority that has been used during the COVID-19 pandemic to expel illegal aliens across the border immediately when certain non-health conditions are met, such as loss of operational control of the border, mandatory appropriation for border wall system infrastructure. The monies appropriated would be used to fund the construction of additional border wall systems, technology, and personnel in strategic locations in accordance with the Border Security Improvement Plan, BSIP. Appropriation for ports of entry infrastructure. Border security is not addressed solely by systems in between the ports of entry. POEs require technology and physical upgrades, as well as an influx of personnel to meet capacity demands and act as the literal gatekeepers for the country. This is the first line of defense against drug and human smuggling operations. Unaccompanied minors. Congress should repeal Section 235 of the William Wilberforce Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act of 2008, TVPRA, which provides numerous immigration benefits to unaccompanied alien children and only encourages more parents to send their children across the border illegally and unaccompanied. These children too often become trafficking victims, which means that the TVPRA has failed. If an alternative repealing Section 235 of the TVPRA is necessary, the section should be amended so that all unaccompanied children, regardless of nationality, may be returned to their home countries in a safe and efficient manner. Currently, the TVPRA allows only children from contiguous countries, Canada and Mexico, to be returned, while every other unaccompanied minor must be placed into a lengthy process that usually results in the minor's landing in the custody of an illegal alien family member. Congress must end the Flores Settlement Agreement by explicitly settling nationwide terms and standards for family and unaccompanied detention and housing. Such standards should focus on meeting human needs and should allow for large-scale use of temporary facilities, for example, tents. Congress should amend the Homeland Security Act and portions of the TVPRA to move detention of alien children expressly from the Department of Health and Human Services to DHS. Asylum reform. I'm on page 148 of the PDF or page 181 out of 922 out of the download. Asylum reform. The standard for credible fear of persecution should be raised and aligned to the standard for asylum. It should also account specifically for credibility determinations that are a key element of the asylum claim. Number 2, codify former asylum bars and third country transit rules. Number three, Congress should eliminate the particular social group protected ground as vague and overbroad, or in an alternative, provide a clear definition with parameters that a minimum codify the holding and manner of AB that gang violence and domestic violence are not grounds for asylum. Parole reform. Congress should end the widespread abuse of parole and contravention of statute and return it to its origins as an extraordinary remedy for very limited purposes. NGOs and processing. Congress should halt funds given to non governmental organizations, NGOs, to process and transport illegal aliens into and throughout the United States. Such funds and infrastructure, including the DHS Joint Processing Centers, should be redirected to secure the border, detain aliens, and provide space for immigration court proceedings. Other pathways for border crossers. While Congress should use its oversight authority to ensure that expedited removal is used to the fullest extent and follow to the letter of the law, other paths for border crossers should be included in a legislative package. Number one, migrant protection protocols. Update the statutory language, providing the basis for the Remain in Mexico program as needed to withstand judicial scrutiny and executive inaction. Number two, asylum cooperative agreements. While the agreements themselves must be negotiated, Congress should mandate that the executive branch work faithfully to negotiate and execute ACAs and set parameters to ensure that an unwilling executive cannot renege on an existing agreement or abandon the effort. And number three, other expedited pathways. Congress should explicitly permit programs akin to the Prompt Asylum Claim Review, PACR, and Humanitarian Asylum Review Process, HARP programs. Employment authorization. Congress should reassert a control of employment authorization, which is subject to rampant regulatory abuse and limited to certain regulatories of legal immigrants and non-immigrants. Number two, Congress should also permanently authorize E-Verify and make it mandatory. State and local law enforcement. Number one, Congress should inequitably authorize state and local law enforcement to participate in immigration and border security actions in compliance with Arizona versus United States. Number two, Congress should require compliance with immigration detainers to the maximum extent consistent with the 10th Amendment and set financial disincentives for jurisdictions that implement either official or unofficial sanctuary policies. Procedural discretion. Congress should restrict the authority for prosecutorial discretion to eliminate it as a catch-all excuse for limiting immigration enforcement. Mandatory detention. Congress should eliminate ambiguous discretionary language in Title VIII that aliens may be detained and clarify that aliens shall be detained. This language, which contrasts with other shall detain language in statute, creates unhelpful ambiguity and allows the executive branch to ignore the will of Congress. Regulations. Withdraw Biden administration regulations and reissue new regulations in the following areas. Number one, credible fear asylum jurisdiction for border crossers. Number two, public charge. T visa and U visa reform. Unless and until T and U visas are repealed, each program needs to be formed to ensure that only legitimate victims of trafficking and crimes who are actively providing significant material assistance to law enforcement are eligible for spots in the queue. Repeal TPS designation. H-1B reform. Transform the program into an elite mechanism exclusively to bring in the best and brightest at the highest wages while simultaneously ensuring that U.S. workers are not being disadvantaged by the program. H-1B is a means only to supplement the U.S. economy and to keep companies competitive and not to depress U.S. labor markets artificially in certain industries. employment authorization. Along with the legislative proposal, take regulatory action to limit the classes of aliens eligible for work authorization. Executive orders, pathways for border crossers. Number one, direct the Department of State and Department of Homeland Security to reinstate asylum cooperative agreements with Northern Triangle countries immediately. Number two, recommence negotiations with Mexico to fully implement the Remain in Mexico protocols. Number three, reinstate to the extent possible expedited pathways for full credible fair immigration court process, PACR and HARP. Number four, prohibit the use of notices to report, the use of any funds for travel into the interior of the United States and government flights or transportation for aliens. Number five, mandate the ICE use all detention space in full compliance with Section 235 of the INA, issue weekly reports on detention capacity, and provide authority for low-level temporary capacity, for example, tents, once permanent space is full. Number six, eliminate the use of ATD for border crossers except in rare cases and only with the explicit authority of the secretary. And number seven, prohibit the use of parole except in matters that are certified by the Secretary of Homeland Security as requiring action for humanitarian or significant public benefit reasons, and prohibit the use of parole in any categorical circumstance. Enforcement. Number one, restrict prosecutorial discretion to eliminate it as a catch-all excuse for limiting immigration enforcement. Number two, mandate the use of E-Verify for anyone doing business with the government. Number three, designate USCIS as intelligence community adjacent, ensuring that it has access to national security and law enforcement databases. Number four, rescind all memoranda in limiting enforcement of immigration laws, including those identifying sensitive zones. And number five, end ICE's widespread use of termination and administrative closure of cases of immigration court, averting or curtailing a mass migration event. Number one, provide that whether the security of Homeland Security determines that an actual or anticipated mass migration of aliens en route to or arriving off the coast of the U.S. presents urgent circumstances requiring an immediate federal response. The secretary may make, subject to the approval of the president, rules and regulations prohibiting in whole or in parts of the introduction of persons from such countries or places as he or she designate in order to avert or curtail such mass migration and for such period of time as is deemed necessary, including through the expulsion of such aliens. Such rule and regulation making shall be subject to the requirements of the Administrative Procedures Act. Provide number two, provide that notwithstanding any other provision of law, when the secretary makes such a determination and then promulgates, subject to the approval of the president, such rules and regulations, the secretary should have the authority to waive all legal requirements of Title VIII that the secretary in his or her sole discretion determines are necessary to avert or curtail the mass migration. Sub-regulatory matters. The USCIS priorities structural changes. Number one, ensure that focus is returned to vetting base eligibility of applicants in fraud detection. Number two, realign the Fraud Detection and National Security Directorate, FD&S, to ensure agency-wide consistency on implementation of fraud detection and vetting policies. Number three, review and repeal any internal agency memo that is consistent with the priorities described in this chapter. The 287G program, issue a memo prohibiting any jurisdiction that applies from being denied across the program unless good cause is shown. Homeland Security investigation, HI's priorities, issue Department Management Directive and ICE Companion Directive. to refocus HSI on immigration offenses and criminal offenses typical associated with immigration. For example, human trafficking. All criminal investigative immigration work without a clear nexus to the border or otherwise to Title 8 should be turned over to the appropriate federal agency. Blackie's warrants, ICE, OPLA, and HSI should issue an F. Dang, should issue. See, I was reading the text message. Wait, I gotta go back. Homeland Security Investigation, FSAC, okay, ICE and HSA should issue a joint internal memo on operationalizing Blackie's warrants for immediate use on worksite enforcement and other appropriate investigations and operations. Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA. Needed reforms. FEMA is the lead federal agency in preparing for and responding to disasters, but its overtask overcompensates for the lack of state and local preparedness in response and is regularly in deep debt. After passage of the 1988 Stafford Act, the number of declared federal disasters rose dramatically as most disasters costs were shifted from states and local governments to the federal government. In addition, state-friendly FEMA regulations, such as a per capita indicator, failed to maintain the pace of inflation and made it easy to meet disaster declaration thresholds. This combination has left FEMA unprepared in both readiness and funding for the truly catastrophic disasters in which its services are most needed. Reform of FEMA requires a greater emphasis on federalism and state and local preparedness, leaving FEMA to focus on large, widespread disasters. Under the Stafford Act, FEMA has the authority to adjust the per capita indicator for damages, which creates a threshold under which states and localities are not eligible for public assistance. FEMA should raise the threshold because the per capita indicator has not yet kept pace with inflation, and this over time effectively lowered the threshold for public assistance and caused FEMA's resources to be outstretched perilously thin. Alternatively, applying a deductible could accomplish a similar outcome while also incentivizing states to take a more proactive role in their own preparedness and repair and response capabilities. In addition, Congress should change the cost share arrangement so that the federal government covers 25% of the cost for small disasters, with the cost share reaching a maximum of 75% for truly catastrophic disasters. FEMA is also responsible for the National Flood Insurance Program, nearly all which is issued by the federal government. So we are currently on page 153, and we are going to currently take a break. And on page 153, as well as on the download on page 186. So within the break, we are going to spend 2 hours in regards to Adriane May's Project 2025 Mandate for Leadership Live with Adriane May's Part 3. So Part 4 will be this evening, as again, on the grind of being able to build billionaire brands, have some people to call back and be able to build, for the sponsorship opportunities for Random Acts of Kindness, our virtual celebration being held September 11th, our official launch being on July 11th, 2024, but finishing what I started, right? So yesterday, made the announcement in regards to Project 2025, the Mandate for Leadership Live with Adriane Mays, and gave you parts 1 and 2, and this morning brought part 3, as well as gave you the insight of day 60 of the billionaire journey of Adriane Mays, AI genius, and Enika Gaines and Adriane Mays, 15 years celebrating with CCC Because We Care Foundation on September 11th, 2024. You never know who you'll impact on the way to your why. So my why, my passion, CCC Because We Care Foundation being one of those things, and having just the steps that God has put step in and stay out. You have to create a plan. Sometimes it takes you to get a ring around your neck before you get it. But Project 2025, Mandate for Leadership, live with Adriane Mays, part 3. As you can see, there's a plan being placed. And so when we come back, and that'll be this afternoon, I'm not going to tell you what time yet, but I will be live here on this page. But we'll get right back into it, and I'll make sure I bookmark the location. We're on page 153 here together, and we'll start on page 154 right at the end of, and we're talking about FEMA. So we're going to start right here on 153, talking about the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA. And we're reading, like I said, Project 2025, Mandate for Leadership. Adriane Mays, president of CCC Because We Care Foundation, building billionaire brands with AI, with digital franchise brands in this digital real estate, taking advantage of what the opportunities are available. That's what we're here. And CCC Because We Care Foundation is here to show the community and build with you. So hopefully you enjoyed the first parts of the part 3. We'll come back with part 4. No type of input from Adriane Mays. I'm just reading it verbatim from the document. And so the purpose of it being that some people are intimidated by the 900-page document mandate. So again, what I'm doing is providing this mandate to you, and that way you can listen to it. And then I'm going to break it down into 60-second segments as a random act of kindness and have it, the algorithm, take it to who it may globally to be able to understand the random acts of kindness virtual celebration, as well as just put people in the know of what Project 2025 is. So hopefully you enjoyed the first parts of part 1, part 2, and leave in the comments what your act of kindness, how you want to help educate someone on what this is or what this is not. But all of this information, if you just listen to the media, you have to go and educate and read for yourself first. And that's what we're doing within our community, Random Acts of Kindness community. So make sure you go to cccwecaremi.com and join now. But let's take a break. Adriane Mays, president of CCC Because We Care Foundation and captain of the Detroit ChatGPT Revolution, signing off. I can, I will, I must. Let's go. What's dope? Detroit, one product, educate. Let's go.